You have to keep redoing things. And it's like you build a house, you have to break it down and then rebuild it. And then you have to renovate it. You have to break it down to the studs and then you have to rebuild it. That's pretty much what entrepreneurship and tech software is like, but no one talks about that level we did and the valuation. Like, I think anyone can throw around $1 billion valuation. If you're burning $500 million to make, $1 million, which a lot of tech companies do, and then raise insane rounds, you raise 500 million, you have no product, and you're a unicorn. The first roles that AI is going to replace is actually managers, because all managers do is push information up and then orders down. I don't think they are actually creating any value, and they're actually a bottleneck to a company. And with AI, as companies become leaner and more efficient, the entire value goes into having incredible individual contributors that can think deeply about the problem.
Welcome everyone to episode 139 of Founders Unfiltered. I'm your host, Mazin. We've been running this podcast for over 5 years now, and the goal's always been simple. Unscripted, honest conversations with founders talking about what it really takes to build a company. Today's guest, Krish, is the co-founder and CEO of Fireflies.ai, an AI mating assistant used by over 20 million users across 500,000 organizations worldwide. That includes 75% of Fortune 500 companies. And what started off as an idea to automate meeting notes became one of the most widely adopted AI native tools years before ChatGPT was a hit. In this episode, we dig deep into Krish's journey from a Microsoft PM to a unicorn founder as we dive into his playbook and pick his brains into what it takes to building an amazing company. Krish, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mazin.
So let's jump right in to the rapid fire section. Who's a founder that you'd blindly back?
I would definitely back someone like Elon, who's done it time and time again. And not just once, but twice, 3 times, 4 times. And each time the scale gets bigger. I think most people have one startup in them. Very few people have 2. I haven't seen people that could do 3, 4 at once. So yeah, would definitely do that. Because most people end up giving up and then, hanging up the boots and go be VCs and invest. But it takes someone crazy to be able to want to get back in and start from zero every single time.
Amazing. One mental model of book that reflects how you operate.
I really like Ben Horowitz's book on the hard things about hard things. And the truth is, there is no easy path when building a startup. It's like getting punched in the gut every single day, but you're still choosing to do it. But one of the important lessons that I learned from that book is if you are not honest, even if that feedback is critical, you're doing a disservice to the person that's working for you, the person that's on your team. And when you lower the bar for one person, it's unfair for everyone else. And I think that was like a really important lesson I learned from reading that book.
What's a daily habit that boosts your creativity?
I like to put on my headphones, go for a long walk or jog, and then listen to 1 or 2 podcasts a day. So I don't have as much time to sit down and read, but audiobooks and podcasts has definitely been a super productivity hack for me whenever I have some free time.
A misbelief about AI that you wish more founders knew?
That's a hard one because AI is doing everything that it promised, if not more. And if anything, we tend to think that we still need to fine tune everything around the edges. But in reality, what people are not thinking about is building for what will be there 1 to 2 years from now. Today is the dumbest AI will ever be. And if you're building products today as if AI is not going to get better, you're going to get left behind. So we severely underestimate where this technology will be 1 to 2 years from now, even technologists, even entrepreneurs who are at the cutting edge. So AI and LLMs continuously surprises every single day.
Yeah, I think a lot to look forward to. And if you were not building Fireflies, what would you be building today if you could start all over again?
Honestly, I'm very interested in what's happening in robotics, especially the amount of change and impact that can happen when you're able to have these robotics in the household. I know it sounds like a sci-fi movie, but if you can afford a car, you'll be able to afford a humanoid robot that's going to be doing chores around the house, cook for you, deal with the laundry, keep the house clean. And I think human civilization will never be the same again. Again, there's chances of you having this Terminator iRobot-like situation too, if these robots turn on us, but just the sheer potential impact that robotics has, I think it could be far greater than software.
Amazing. Good one. So, Krish, tell us where you grew up. Talk to us about the early days. And did you always know you'd become an entrepreneur?
I was born in India. I spent up to 5 years there near Hyderabad. And then I actually moved to the US. So my dad had moved there during the dot-com bubble. He was in software engineering. And I grew up in Silicon Valley. So I was surrounded by people in tech, people doing startups all my life. Although I didn't think I would want to go into technology. I felt like, nah, this place is too oversaturated. It's kind of boring. Let me go do something different. So I had a heavy influence from my mom's side to go do medicine and be a doctor. And then my first year in college, I realized within the first semester, yeah, this is not what I want to do. It's not fun. I definitely set out, I wanted to be a plastic surgeon. I was doing a lot of internships and research in that place, completely different. And for whatever reason, I decided to switch to doing something completely different. And if you're Indian, you only have really two options that make your parents happy, either medicine or engineering. And so I decided to switch into the technology field. I also went to UPenn, so there was a heavy business and finance influence at Wharton. Took a lot of classes there. A lot of my friends that went through that program. And yeah, little would I know that I would be going and interning at a tech company my sophomore year as a product manager, and then going and joining Microsoft the year after. I graduated early within 3 years. And yeah, from 2 years into college, not knowing what I'm going to do, to being a PM at Microsoft, it was a drastic change. But yeah, I think part of it was just returning to my roots, which is everyone in my family was in tech and business. So I think that was a natural pull for me. I always knew whether I was a doctor or an engineer, I wanted to build something on my own and run a business. So that was a deep part of my, I think, earning to go and do this stuff.
And so walk us through it. How did those years at Microsoft shape your vision, and how did you take that step to quit and start up?
I was at Microsoft for a little over a year. So it was a very brief period of time. I was actually going to go off to grad school in London, in Cambridge. But there was a fateful summer where my friend who was graduating at MIT said, you should come hang out with me in Boston and spend the summer there. And we can work on a bunch of different projects together like we did in college. And yeah, I just moved out there one fine summer, just like a few days after I left Microsoft. We started working on a bunch of different projects, from crypto to drones to food delivery apps, you name it. And at the end of the summer, he said, do you really want to go to grad school? I don't know. This seems way more fun. And this was a guy that had a offer letter to go to Stanford for his computer science master's. And he said, I'm going to drop the program if you're going to drop grad school and we can start a startup together. So yeah, we ended up moving out to the Bay Area. That was my only contingency, which was, if we do start this, I want to be in San Francisco where all the tech is happening at the time. All the investors are there. And I think my opinion has changed since then. I think you can build an amazing company from anywhere in the world, especially in SaaS and software. So at that time, we moved out there 2016 to 2018. We didn't know what we were doing. I like to say we were walking through a desert and you're lost. You don't have a map and you have to figure things out. We tried and failed, got a lot of bad advice along the way. That's the thing, right? It's okay to fail on your own, but it hurts even more when you get advice that you think is good, but it's actually really bad and sets you back. So all that, 2 years, and we were about to call it quits, go back and get regular jobs. Backs were against the wall. We had very little money left because we pretty much bootstrapped it. We did a small friends and family round, but again, didn't take money from family or friends. It was just other small angels that felt bad for us, to be honest, and gave us small checks. And that kept us afloat. Living in San Francisco was extremely expensive, and to figure out how to live there on very little money, and I had to dip into my savings. I was pretty much almost done with all of my Microsoft savings. Again, there isn't much because I worked there for a year. Yeah, it was 2 years of trial and error.
Walk us through that time, just trying different things. What were there some ideas that stuck, or and I feel like there was a specific piece of bad advice that you got, so I want to dig into that as well.
Yeah. Well, there was one common consistent theme throughout what we were doing. And it was, funny enough, conversational AI, which is now the rage with LLMs. At the time, we felt like everyone was building products around hard quantitative data, but the real value inside an organization is the conversational data, the emails, the meetings, the messages, and what sort of insights can you unlock from it. There were a lot of companies that would tell you your sales reps are sending 100 emails, but what I want to know is, are the emails any good? Are people angry? Are they frustrated? So that was like the core thesis. And some of the first products we built were looking at analyzing emails, doing sentiment analysis, and trying to find like a needle in a haystack. Like a lot of that stuff we were doing in the early days. And then we said, there has to be something that people will want to use every single day. I don't want some analytics that I look at once a month, and if I don't find this valuable, I'm going to churn. So we kept thinking, and we started brainstorming what are things that we do every single day. We have a lot of meetings, and what is the biggest challenge with meetings? Well, I don't remember anything a week later, let alone 2 days later. And so we said, what do I do when it comes to meetings? Well, the answer is obvious. We take a lot of notes, and we go off of our memory. And when I meet you 6 weeks from now for a follow-up meeting with an investor, I probably forgot everything I talked about. So that was the starting point. And then we said, okay, if we're going to make this work, we need to first go get customers before we even build the product. We validated the idea that way. We started taking manual notes for people. We could have easily, we could have easily turned this into a human in the loop business, right? But we said, okay, we validated this. We got enough people to pay us money, but we need to now stop, churn out all these customers, and then figure out how to build the actual tech stack around it. I didn't want to be a human-enabled business. I wanted to be a proper software business. So that was...
So in that 2-year period, you had this thesis the whole time. You were kind of thinking this is the idea you want to tackle, and you kind of tested it out, you validated it. And okay, at the end of the 2 years, you're like, okay, now let's go and actually build it.
Yeah. So 2016 to 2018 was all the other ideas. 2018, we started to work on meetings. And then by 2019, we were starting to build out the tech stack. We raised our seed round at the end of 2019 when we started actually validating the tech could actually work. We launched in January 2020. So success overnight is a myth for us. It was a 4-year grind. And one thing that came out of that was COVID happened a few weeks after our launch. Everyone switching to video conferencing calls. All of a sudden, there was a market for what we were building, and that growth started to take off there. But then you deal with scaling challenges because now you're trying to hold everything together with duct tape as you scale super fast. And again, both Sam and I had never worked on high scale software that can support insane volume like YouTube and live streaming apps. So we were just learning on the fly, figuring things out. A lot of the people we hired at the time themselves didn't know all of this stuff. Like we didn't have the money or resources to go hire someone that worked at Twitch or YouTube or Amazon. We even tried to recruit a VP from Amazon who was this close to signing the offer letter. And then he got cold feet. I'm sure he regrets it now. But I was like, you know what? I'm done trying to convince these like big corporate tech executives. First of all, that's a terrible idea. Don't listen to people that tell you to go hire big tech executives when you're that small of a company. Second, these people are not going to grind. They're comfy in their cushy jobs and high paying salaries to want to actually take any real risk. And it makes sense. You have a family, you're comfortable in your mid to late 40s. So I think that was the wrong DNA at that time. So again, bad advice can set you back. We wasted a couple months trying to hire this like unicorn tech executive that would look great for PR, but would actually have been terrible for the business because they couldn't get into the weeds. So 2020 was amazing, but it was also very difficult because we're up every day late at night trying to keep the systems up. And in 2021, we completely rebuilt our engine again and re-architected it. So yeah, you have to keep redoing things. And it's like you build a house, you have to break it down and then rebuild it. And then you have to renovate it. You have to break it down to the studs and then you have to rebuild it. That's pretty much what entrepreneurship and tech software is like, but no one talks about that.
And I definitely want to talk a lot more about that. But first, how did you know like that this was the idea that you wanted to double down on? You spent 2 years, you pivoted. What was that? Like, was there a specific metric? How did you know that, I now want to completely commit to this idea?
I didn't have to take an hour to convince someone to use this. They're like, yeah, if it's here, I'm going to use it right now. Usually ideas that seem good, but not really good, you have to take a long time to convince someone. And when it comes to users, I just felt like this was a problem that I faced that I would use every day for myself. And we got to a point where even if we don't get many customers, at least I know I'm going to use this every day. So let's just build it for ourselves. And that was the unlock for us.
And then walk us through some of those early days and the challenges with scaling. I mean, you touched on it a little bit. You said you were trying to patch things together, but can you give us some numbers? How quickly were you guys growing? How much was the traffic growing, and how did you figure out with a team that didn't have the experience to kind of keep up with that?
Today, we're doing billions of minutes of data processed through our system. Back then, we were doing tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands and then millions. So it just progressively got bigger and bigger. And I guess that's what exponential scale looks like when your hair is on fire all the time. And the system is you're going down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what's breaking, why is it breaking? Do you throw servers at the problem? Do you have to build your own infrastructure? There was a lot of things like moving from Google to Amazon, back to Google. There's so much stuff that had to happen. And believe it or not, we now run our own cloud infrastructure. The majority of our traffic runs off of our own infrastructure. We don't go through GCP or Amazon Web Services. I think that's a huge competitive advantage for us against our competitors. And I like to believe that for every $5 that they spend, we spend $1. So it gives us incredible economies of scale, helps us bring that value back to our customers.
At what point did you make that transition from, using hosted tech to kind of building your own? Because that's always a tough decision. And
I think 2 years into the launch, that's when we started doing that, because that's when we were already at scale. We had raised our Series A and we knew we wanted to figure out how to do this in a more cost-effective way. I think one good factor for our team is that we're both product visionary, but we're also very much deep into the details. I like ops. I like systems engineering. I like to figure out how to build a very optimized product. And very few AI companies today are profitable and scaling quickly. And I'm just really proud of the way we got to the level we did and the valuation. I think anyone can throw around $1 billion valuation. If you're burning $500 million to make $1 million, which a lot of tech companies do, and then raise insane rounds. You raise 500 million, you have no product, and you're a unicorn. That's not really a unicorn, in my opinion. I think you should be really a true unicorn when you are profitable, or at least close to profitable. You're building a real business with real customers, real revenue, and that's how it used to be back in the day. Companies like Google and Amazon didn't get to raise so much capital before they were breakout companies. And again, there are companies that can raise tons of money, burn a ton of money in very competitive markets, and you need to do that to get big, like the Ubers of the world, the Olas of the world. You need to do that. But for SaaS software, I think there is a misconception that that's the only way to grow. I don't think that's necessarily the case. But yeah, back to the building our own infrastructure thing. It's because of those hard decisions we made at that time which allowed us to become a business that was very efficient.
And talking about profitability, can you walk us through your decision to fundraise and how were you thinking about staying profitable? Was that a metric that the team was looking at early on?
Sam and my dream was actually never to fundraise. We wanted to be bootstrapped. We wanted to be self-sufficient. We want to be in control of our own destiny. And I think there was something beautiful about some of these companies back in the day that bootstrapped themselves to massive, massive businesses. The reality is when you're working in AI and voice streaming technology, it's very expensive. And also when you're trying to build a freemium business where you're giving the product out for free for a good chunk of users and then monetizing in the back end, you do need to deploy capital. So that was one of the reasons why we raised our seed round, which was about $4.5 to $5 million. And then we later raised our Series A purely because of the demand and scale. I don't think we needed to raise that Series A at that time. We had plenty of funding and we were on the fence about it, but great investors came in like Vinod Khosla, and we felt like we don't know what's going to happen during the pandemic. It was early on in the pandemic, 2020, 2021 time period. So we said, just for good measure, let's do it. But when we raised our Series A, we didn't really want to, but we went ahead and did it. We said, we're never going to raise again. And we've held true to that over the last 4+ years. So I think we held ourselves to our word. So not quite necessarily bootstrap, but we scaled the business without really touching any of our Series A funding.
And do you have any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs that are listening in when it comes to bootstrap versus raising capital?
There's so much that depends. I don't like to give blanket advice because it depends on the company you're building, the people you're hiring, the market you're in, the competition, the cost of the technology and go to market. There's so much stuff. But typically, if you're in SaaS and you can build an MVP and validate it and get some real customers, I think you can try to bootstrap for as long as possible. But for some companies, it's very difficult. Like if you're in robotics, you're going to have capital to do it. There was one company that was coming out of YC. They were building supersonic planes. So they're going to need to raise money, right? There's just no other way. But typically, the companies that can bootstrap are usually pure software businesses, and that too SaaS businesses. And if you have a flywheel type go-to-market where you're not spending billions of dollars on sales and marketing, you can do it. One of the things that I see with a lot of companies in India is marketing is the only way they're going to grow their business. I know people think there isn't any other way, but yeah, you have to market and you have to spend money on marketing and advertising to grow your business. Well, if you have a business that spreads through word of mouth and has like a viral loop, like what we had at Fireflies or what Dropbox had or Calendly had, then I think that gives you a little bit more room to bootstrap if you can.
Fair. Fair. No, that makes a lot of sense. And looking back, is there one thing or a few things that you would have done differently in your early days now that you have, hindsight?
I think I would have doubled down on making great hires sooner. Sometimes you're on the fence about, do I need that extra person? Do I want to hire this person? Sometimes if you find someone great, even if there isn't necessarily a role for that person at that point in time, I say just hire them because you will figure something out for them. That's something I've learned is it's easy to find good people, but it takes something truly exceptional to find that great person. And then the ROI of having someone great versus good is exponential. It compounds. And I think there were people that companies will hire in the beginning because you just want to get someone in the door. And that makes sense. But over time, like we've raised our bar very high. And then the company itself has leveled up where there's people we might have hired 2 years ago that we would not hire today because the bar is just really high. So I guess 2 pieces of advice is if you find someone great, like go for it. And I wish we did that sooner. And the second thing is someone that feels good, okay, can do the job, but your gut is telling you this person is not 10 out of 10 exceptional. I wouldn't hire that person.
Amazing. And now talking about the evolution of the landscape, I mean, it's changed quite a bit since you started in 2016 and, through COVID and then the whole ChatGPT boom. How have you guys kept up to pace, and how do you continue to stay relevant with so much competition in the space?
Speed is everything. Competition is going to happen once you find something that works and you're successful at doing it. There's going to be a lot of companies that are going to take note. Many startups, for all the marketing they do, they're very unoriginal. They'll just see something that's working and copy it. And then, they'll put up a nice fancy landing page and say they're doing something different. But at the end of the day, they're just like trying to find what's working and then just copy it. Very few companies actually innovate. That's the sad reality. And there's nothing wrong with copying. And some people will use their execution ability, their capital advantage to do really well. But a lot of people just copy. And that's just the name of the game. And today, it's much easier to copy and build products than it was a few years ago. And what took us maybe 2 years to build, today you might be able to build a baseline product within like a few months. Maybe you can use some external APIs and build it in a few weeks. But there's the other parts of actually getting customers, being feature rich, being enterprise compliant. There's so many other things that go into the business, like the go-to-market, the flywheel, building the brand, and trying to like iterate over time. I think that's like the biggest challenge is you can build a product that gets you 7 out of 10, but to get to that 10 out of 10 requires constant iteration. Like we're shipping hundreds of changes every week, and that's just a constant part of our playbook, right? We have to keep doing and keep executing in that manner. So competition is inevitable, but what we like to do is find the hardest things that we should solve that will make our customer experiences 10x. And that's what's allowed us to move from being a point solution like an AI note taker to building now an end-to-end platform for users. So while a lot of people might come out and go build an AI note taker because it's easy, it's going to take a lot more work to turn a note taker into a platform. But we've spent the last 2 years just focused on that problem.
That makes a lot of sense. But just want to kind of understand a bit more how you think about your role changing, as the company has grown, right? You've spoken about speed being crucial. How do you continue to be fast as you become bigger and bigger? And at some point it becomes hard to kind of keep being that scrappy. So what are some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm still very hands-on, very hyper involved. I think the best companies need to have founders that are extremely involved, extremely opinionated, and it might sound controversial, but you need to be able to cut through the noise and make a decision and then get everyone behind you and move. But if you are also not really a good product person, really thoughtful about what you're doing, you can make a lot of mistakes that way too, right? Having an ineffective founder that says it's my way or the highway, and they're not very smart and they're making the bad mistakes, they're going to move fast in the wrong direction. So I fully take responsibility for the fact that the decisions that we're making and the speed at which we're moving, it might be my decision. I'm hearing a lot of inputs, but I'm making that call very, very quickly. So that's both an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage if you're not like listening or if you're not understanding or if your judgment is wrong, right? It's all about judgment. And you see this with countries too. There isn't one form of government that's actually effective. This is what I think is very contrarian. There are countries out there, especially like you look at places like UAE and Dubai and other places where it's pretty top down, but they're pretty amazing countries. So there isn't one way to run a company. I genuinely believe that. That's like my contrarian take, and people can say whatever they want about it. But most often advisors, VCs, board members are not going to cut it. Like it has to be you, the founders and the early employees that are figuring things out, and you're making things happen. I would also say we've taken a very extreme approach. We don't do middle management. We have very few managers within the company. In fact, I wrote this whole article about the first roles that AI is going to replace is actually managers, because all managers do is push information up and then orders down. I don't think they are actually creating any value, and they're actually a bottleneck to a company. And with AI, as companies become leaner and more efficient, the entire value goes into having incredible individual contributors that can think deeply about the problem. So that's how I've been able to build a business. And we've kept our team lean enough where we hire such incredible ICs. There's no need for managers at the scale we're operating.
How do you find these people? Like, what are the qualities you're looking for in these incredible 10 out of 10 ICs?
I think it's less about experience and more about aptitude, more about hustle, more about like the desire to want to will something into existence. You can see that in a person by how proactive they are, how well they communicate, how clear their messaging is. And a lot of times, I'm all right if you don't know the answer, but the next time we meet, if you're going to find out, that's great. Like, that's what I want to see, is someone that wants to learn it all rather than know it all. That's a famous quote by Satya Nadella, but it's very much true. Like, if you hire experienced people from big tech companies that have done certain things, they're only going to look at how to solve a problem from that point of view. If you give someone a hammer, everything will look like a nail. But if you have people that can be creative, I really believe the best companies are built by people that were not actually domain experts in those necessary fields, because they look at the problems differently. And that's what I say. Like, you can be a young person with only 2 to 3 years of experience, but your aptitude and your energy and your willingness to learn is way higher. So that's the first thing I look for before I even consider experience.
And want to dig into this a bit more. How do you look for that? What are you looking for? Like, what are cues or questions that you ask?
I think it's really starting from the way they reach out to you, or when you reach out to them, like how they communicate. Like, it's a gut feel. I've interviewed thousands of people by now, and so I feel like I've become a better judge of character over time, and you get a good taste for it. In terms of who's going to cut it, who's not going to be cutting it. Very rarely have I missed out on someone where I thought this person wasn't going to be that great, but for whatever reason, the team pushed for it and we hired it, and they turn out to be exceptional. That's been far and few. But most often, like, when I thought someone is going to be amazing, they did turn out to be amazing. So that's kind of how I look at like the proxy, is when we're doing the interviews. Also, it's like all about practical stuff, right? Both for engineering as well as for non-technical roles. It's about like the thoroughness of their answers and how well they think through those problems. Yeah.
And we spoke a little bit about competition, but want to get your thoughts on, do you like actively look at what other people are doing, or are you just, kind of looking at your own data and your own set of users? How much of a role does the competitive landscape play in your product strategy?
I think we have a general understanding of what's going on in the market and what people are doing. We know when people are copying us, and we know when people are trying to emulate us. But at the end of the day, we focus more on what the customers need. And the company that is closest to the customers and really understands what the customer needs is going to win. That's how companies like Amazon got such a huge advantage. I obsess less over competition, and I obsess more over what customers want. And that's how you innovate. And that's how, if you are the best at doing something that your customers need that your competitors can't do, that enough is your moat. Maybe that moat only lasts a year, maybe it lasts 2 years, but it starts to compound, and you take like 10, 20 swings at the plate. You end up creating something really cool.
Being slightly ahead for a little bit longer kind of compounds over time, which makes a lot of sense. And you've seen quite a few waves in this field that's growing quickly. What do you think the next few years looks like? And I know that this is a difficult question, given that your advice in the start was nobody knows what the next few years look like. But can you kind of give us your perspective, and what are maybe some of the
the pessimistic perspective that some people like to put out there is no more scope for SaaS that some of the big companies are going to do everything and everyone's going to cook up their own software because AI is going to let you code immediately. And there's no room for SaaS. Either you're using one of the big providers or you are essentially making your own SaaS product. So I don't know what to make of that. Maybe that is true. I don't know. But what I think is the most plausible outcome is really good SaaS companies are going to be more autonomous. They're going to solve more problems for users from end to end. Gone are the days where you're like basically a spreadsheet that's wrapped up into a SaaS product. I don't think those things are going to last. Everything is going to be AI native, AI by default. And it's all about automations and workflows. That's what we're betting Fireflies on, is how can Fireflies assist you during a meeting, after a meeting, before a meeting? How can it automate work for you by the time you hit end on that video call? All that work you need to do afterwards, it's already gotten started doing it. And I think that AI needs to be interoperable. So it'll need to work across the browser. It'll need to work across other tools. Siloed technology is not the solution. And if you're trying to build a walled garden in the world of AI, I don't think that's going to actually work. That's not a defensible moat, because the best AI can plug into everything. It can scrape the web. It can do all these sort of things like a human would. And that's how I see the world moving.
And with that, any advice that you have for builders who are just starting out, who are early in the journey?
I'd say figure out how to validate something very, very quickly using LLMs and seeing if people are actually willing to pay for it. Ultimately, people can say a lot of nice things about your product, but if they're not going to pull out their card and pay for it, they don't really care.
Validate as quickly as you can. Amazing. And one question that we ask all our guests: what's one piece of unfiltered feedback that you received that really impacted you personally or professionally?
I believe that early on, it's really important not to multitask. I like to do 10 different things at once, but it's much better to do one thing, see it through all the way, whether it succeeds or fails, and then move on to the next thing. Because when you multitask, you naturally will have your attention divert and you're not going to be able to truly validate something. What you end up having is you're having 5 mediocre things that are moving at a mediocre pace and nothing is actually getting to completion. Eventually, as you start scaling, you are going to need to multitask and you have teams that are dedicated to certain problems. But it's very easy to get tempted into multitasking early on. But my feedback is, especially when you're like a 4 or 5 person company, do one thing and do it really well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Krish. It was great having you on the show. Thank you for tuning in, everyone.
I had a lot of fun. Yes. Thanks for having me as well.